NTA International News.
Federal government assures Nigerians of fair treatment of all states of the Federation in ambassadorial appointments. World Health Organization applauds Nigeria on efforts at revitalizing primary health care. Theresa May becomes British Prime Minister as David Cameron bows out. Thank you for joining us on the news on NTA International. I am Ifeanyi Okafor. Top on the news, 59-year-old former Home Secretary Theresa May is the new Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Theresa May takes office after accepting the Queen's invitation to form a new government following the resignation of David Cameron. Justin Bem-Unyi takes us through Theresa May's transition from Home Secretary to Prime Minister.
Theresa May, British new Prime Minister, is also the new Conservative Party leader, taking charge at one of the most turbulent times in recent political history. The 59-year-old Mrs. May, who is now second female Prime Minister of Britain, had her earlier ambition to be UK's first female Prime Minister, but was reasonably expected to have had to wait until at least 2018. But the EU referendum, which David Cameron called and lost, turned political certainties on their head. And as other candidates fell by the wayside after the Prime Minister's own resignation, Mrs. May emerged as the unity candidate to succeed David Cameron. While the early years of Mrs. May's time in Downing Street may be dominated by the process of divorcing the UK from the EU and the deal she will be able to strike, she has also insisted she won't be content with the safe pair of hands tag that is often attached to her.
I have just been to Buckingham Palace, where Her Majesty the Queen has asked me to form a new government, and I accepted. In David Cameron, I follow in the footsteps of a great modern Prime Minister.
Meanwhile, David Cameron said being Prime Minister had been the greatest honor of his life as he resigned.
And as we leave for the last time, my only wish is continued success for this great country that I love so very much.
The former UK Prime Minister was described by the Tory party chairman, Lord Tebbit, as a man that will be remembered by many as the man who accidentally got the UK out of the euro. Justin Bem-Unyi, NTA News.
Our focus on business matters elsewhere now. Developing business models that can empower the young unemployed population of Africa is the thrust of a conference of North America and African entrepreneurs at the Global Economic Institute for Africa in Canada. Here is Joy Osiago with details of the conference.
As they assembled in the Canadian capital city to find innovative ways to move the African continent forward, one thing is paramount to these entrepreneurs. Now, they say the greatest potential of Africa will begin to emerge when every African business executive decides to empower a group of young people through marketable skills.
We probably have 4,000 Ghanaians right now that run their own business. It's getting just people looking a little bit different. But you know what, I'll tell you, the excitement that comes alive in the people themselves, it is not a pressure from the outside in. It is an excitement that comes from the inside and works itself out.
Over time, we built this model, and now today we've got 4,000 active young women across Nigeria that are earning their own income, paying their own rent, and many of them sustaining their own families profitably, because we were able to take one business idea, but then begin to think of how can it have a social impact.
As they share testimonies of successful business ideas, they are also considering issues of synergy, evaluation, and a unified system that can work for the continent.
Africa's problem cannot only be solved by local initiatives. It needs a global solution that should be driven probably by African people, or also in togetherness with other people.
The more awareness there is of Africa and the more better understanding that is created, the better it is for Africa, and there are tremendous benefits.
From the Canadian capital city, Ottawa, Joy Osiago, NTA News.
Back home in Nigeria, the wife of the president, Mrs. Aisha Muhammadu Buhari, has remained resolute in her advocacy to promote women entrepreneurship and businesses in order to contribute to the nation's development. Mrs. Buhari stated this at the Women in Export Stakeholders Forum, an exhibition in Abuja, organized by the Nigerian Export Promotion Council, NEPC, in conjunction with the International Trade Center, ITC. State House correspondent Aliu Kabir put together the report.
Stakeholders believed that women entrepreneurs face significant obstacles to trade that hinder their competitiveness and integration into the global economy, focusing attention on Nigerian women. Women in Export Stakeholders Forum and Exhibition provided a platform for policymakers, the business community, and representatives of the business organizations to discuss on how to integrate women businesses as part of the economic development of Nigeria through trade.
I therefore make a clearing call to captains of industries, in particular the organized private sector, to join hands with NEPC/ITC on this commitment to move Nigerian women to the global export market. On our part, we will advocate with government for a policy that addresses the public procurement allocation from women-owned businesses.
The wife of the president applauded the initiative, saying that if Nigerian women are supported for their businesses to flourish, they will contribute to job creation and play a greater role in the economic development of the nation.
In that regard, I hereby announce my full support to the ITC call to action. She trades and to join the NEPC's efforts and advocacy towards galvanizing stakeholders in the public and private sectors to harness the potential of 200,000 Nigerian women entrepreneurs to scale and access domestic, regional, and international markets.
She further explained,
achieving this action will enhance job creation and unleash the national economic development.
Today I believe, because of She Trades and because of the Nigerian partners, the light at the end of the tunnel just got brighter for these four ladies and many more like them.
The forum has a theme, achieving zero oil growth through women inclusiveness in global export trade. In Abuja, Aliu Kabir, NTA News.
More on business with Chazalam Ekiye.
A warm welcome to Business News segment. World Bank says Nigeria has recorded slight improvement in Global Competitiveness Index ranking. The bank says Nigeria rose from 127 in 2014 and 2015 and has performed well on market size, macroeconomic environment, and labor market efficiency. Meanwhile, Nigeria's oil production capacity now stands at about 1.9 million barrels per day. Minister of State Petroleum Resources Emmanuel Ibekachiku says oil production fell from 2.2 million barrels per day early this year due to attacks on oil facilities. In the meantime, UK trade envoy to Nigeria John Howell says Nigerians in the diaspora remains the second largest in the world and remains an attractive export and investment destination for the UK due to its scale, resource wealth, and location potential. In 2015, Nigeria was named the third fastest growing economy in the world and is expected to grow between 5% and 7% annually by 2030. And finally, multinational banking and financial services company JP Morgan Chase says it will raise the minimum wage for 18,000 U.S. employees over 3 years, a decision that follows political pressure and moves by some states to raise pay for low-level workers. And trading on the equities market closed today on a negative note as the all-share index lost 0.44%. That's business news at this time. I'm Chia Zalameke. The news continues. Please stay with us.
Thank you, Chazalam. Now turning to oil and gas. And users of petrol and other petroleum products will not need to resort to panic buying anymore, as the Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association, PENGASSN, suspends its nationwide strike. President of the association, Francis John, announced the suspension of the strike after reaching an agreement with the federal government. Emmanuel Ayimiro reports.
It was the final leg of the meeting, which started on Monday, with PENGASSN, NOPENG, representatives of the oil companies and the federal government in attendance. After long hours of deliberations behind closed doors, PENGASSN went into their next meeting, where a communique was issued on the decision to suspend the industrial action over issues of concern to its members. PENGASSN President Francis Johnson says the union is showing understanding in view of a satisfactory outcome with the government and the oil companies.
Next in session, in consideration of issues during the meeting with federal government, including a promise to resolve a few outstanding IR issues, have accepted to show understanding. The association leadership hereby advise our members that from today, 30th of July, everybody should return to their respective office.
The Minister of Labour and Employment, Chris Ngige, says the tripartite meeting agreed where redundancy has been declared by some international oil companies without applying appropriate labor laws, such companies should revert to status quo ante.
The meeting agreed that there will be no victimization of workers for reasons of participation in this strike. This what is in this document.
Ngige added that the tripartite meeting also agreed on the payment structure put in place to pay off areas of the old joint venture cash calls inherited by the present administration. In Abuja, Emmanuel Ayimiro, NTA News.
Moving now to legislative matters, Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Geoffrey Onyama, and the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Babachir David Lawal, have assured that no state will be left out in the federal government's ambassadorial appointments. They stated this during an interactive session with the Senate Committee on Foreign Affairs. National Assembly correspondent Grace Oyenubi reports.
The Senate had mandated the committee to investigate the criteria used to nominate the 47 career officers as ambassadorial nominees from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
There has been public outcry on the list that some people have been complaining. We have several petitions that have been sent to the Senate.
It was really something that was done with against a set criteria that we felt would be fair for the country and as fair as possible for those who were in contention for selection.
I sympathize with our position that it would have been best or better if you had had the whole list all together, in which case you would take it as one single entity.
The Secretary to the Government of the Federation further said the full list, which will consist of non-career officers to occupy the 110 missions all over the world, will be sent for confirmation soon. From the National Assembly, Grace Oyenubi, NTA News.
And from the Green Chamber, the House of Representatives has urged the federal government to stop plans by the electricity distribution company to increase electricity tariff. National Assembly correspondent Ignatius Nkwo tells us more.
The faces of members, when Representative Aliu Madaki from Kano State drew their attention to plans by DISCOs to increase electricity tariff by 100%, was as disappointing as that of the mover of the motion.
Electricity tariff from the current 24 naira per kilowatt to 50 naira.
Even if we allow them to increase and increase and increase, they cannot fix the power sector. These are investors, because we have to be careful. The president goes around the world meeting investors to come in here. People have invested in this.
And we are here confronted with another issue of 100% increase.
The House urged the federal government to release funds as soon as possible for the Nigerian team for the 2016 Rio Olympics in Brazil. Another motion adopted by the House is that moved by Representative Sani Abdu from Bauchi State for an investigative hearing towards upgrading the National Hospital, Abuja, for better service delivery.
In both the physical structures and service delivery indices have become intolerable.
Women dread going to that hospital.
A bill for an act to provide for a national empowerment and enhancement scheme which seeks to enhance government poverty alleviation programs, sponsored by Representative Goni Lawan from Yobe State, passed second reading.
The scheme as contemplated in the bill will actualize some of the 17 points of the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations.
The House observed a minute silence in honor of late Umaru Shinkafi. A total of 5 bills were withdrawn, and one of them is that sponsored by House Leader Femi Bajabia-Mila. That bill seeks to prohibit the late payments, non-payment and underpayment of workers' salaries in Nigeria. Speaker Yakubu Dogara granted audience to the Regional Director, Africa, of the World Health Organization, Dr. Matsidiso Rebecca Moeti. The Speaker announced that the House of Representatives is to consider a bill on special fund for health emergencies in Nigeria.
To continue to assure you that we'll continue to support this sector, will do everything possible.
The Director requested for the operationalization of the National Health Provision of 1% of consolidated revenue funding for health. From the National Assembly, Ignatius Nkwo, NTA News.
This is the news on NTA International from Abuja, Nigeria's capital. We'll have more news after the break. Join us in a moment.
Travel around the world, you will find out that there is no place like Nigeria. Beautiful, peaceful, very warm and friendly climate all year round. Largest concentration of black people in the world. Hospitable, vibrant and happy people. There is no place like Nigeria, a land of opportunities, the biggest window in the world of business and investments, extremely rich in multicultural diversity. There is no place like Nigeria.
Nigeria, good people, great nation.
Great to have you back on the news. Nigeria's efforts at revitalizing primary healthcare has been applauded by the World Health Organization, WHO. It says the approach is improving its capacity to prepare and respond to outbreak of epidemic. Regional Director of the Organization for Africa, Dr. Rebecca Moeti, gave the commendation while briefing journalists of her impression on health issues in Nigeria. Oinaya Kaluoka reports.
The WHO African Regional Director, Dr. Rebecca Moeti, says the World Health Body is impressed with Nigeria's government's determination towards ensuring that every Nigerian has access to quality health service.
Because this is a government that's determined that Nigeria will succeed in terms of socio-economic development. I was very encouraged that the agenda and the priorities defined by the government are very much reflecting what we as WHO have defined as our priorities.
She, however, pointed out that the health system in the country should become more functional and the need to sustain surveillance towards certification of Nigeria as a polio-free country. Outgoing WHO country representative said the government of Nigeria has mapped out a clear vision on what needs to be done on healthcare delivery.
Recently we had Lassa fever, we had cholera, we have meningitis, we have measles. Together, it was being contained all of these epidemics.
Minister of Health disclosed that the federal government is providing $1.5 million to each state to utilize in refurbishing the primary health care facilities.
We want to assure that that's just the first step. Each state has the potential to earn as much as $10 million if they use it well in the next 4 years. If they do not do well with it, they won't get more.
The WHO African Regional Director, who has since departed the country, was in Nigeria on a 3-day official visit on matters relating to health development in Nigeria and the African region. Oinaya Kaluoka, NTA News.
Staying with health matters, development of a national epidemiological database, establishment of laboratories of epidemiologists have been listed as some of the strategies for better practice of epidemiology in Nigeria. This was the submission at the 5th Annual Scientific Conference of the Epidemiological Society of Nigeria, EPISN, in Abuja. Chimdima Ndubisi reports.
Nigeria has the highest number of medical schools and trained doctors in Africa that are highly knowledgeable in epidemiological and biostatistical theories. Yet, the country is still grappling with containing and eradicating diseases like malaria, Lassa fever and cholera, some of which are yearly occurrences. Epidemiologists across the country therefore gathered to assess the practice, review challenges, and draw up lessons for better practice of the field of study, which deals with patterns, causes, effects, and control of health conditions in defined populations.
We say, for instance, there's 60% of our patients are all malaria cases. That was what happened since 1960 till now. It has never changed. And nobody can verify that to us. We should verify that. How many hospital beds do we have for the Nigerian people? How many doctors are really working? How many nurses do we have? We need information to plan. We need information to practice. And epidemiology is about counting, dividing, and comparing. And we need to start that process.
If these things are documented and shared, it gives a better perspective on how we can remodel the Nigerian program, the Nigerian health system, and improve on the implementation of research programs and healthcare delivery within the country. We've talked about networking as a very important tool in expanding the practice of epidemiology in Nigeria.
Journalists are trained to ask 5 cardinal questions in their sourcing and dissemination of information. These questions are what, who, why, where, when, and how. My contact with epidemiologists shows that these same questions apply in the practice of epidemiology, which is the backbone of public health. In Abuja, Chimdima Ndubisi, NTA News.
Now turning to ICT matters, the federal government says it will continue to pursue efforts towards a complete digital environment in the country. The Acting Director General of the National Information Technology Development Agency, NIDDA, Dr. Vincent Olatunji, stated this while inaugurating the 2016 E-Nigeria Conference Committee on behalf of the Minister of Communication. He noted that the country will be better for it if all the sectors of the economy are completely on the e-platform.
Our economy, and we are focusing on our startups, talents, innovative ideas, potentials that are available in the country, and we intend to translate this into actionable plans that will assist in the change agenda of the federal government.
Correspondent Ruben Okala reports that E-Nigeria Conference, which is aimed at encouraging digital economy and the diversification of the economy, is scheduled for December this year. Now, sports package, federal government pledges support for Team Nigeria at the forthcoming Rio Olympic Games as Portuguese players receive national honors for winning Euro 2016. Details of these and more with Fisayo Gunfuyi.
Set to join the rest of the world in the 31st Olympiad holding in the Brazilian city of Rio de Janeiro from August 5 to 21. 96 Nigerian athletes are to compete in 7 events of football, basketball, athletics, wrestling, weightlifting, boxing, rowing and table tennis. While looking forward to a Nigerian podium finish at the Games, some stakeholders are not so optimistic.
So if he tells us that the athletes are well prepared and they are ready to go, Nigerians should accept. And Rio is just 3 weeks away from now, and we'll be watching to know if our athletes are really prepared or not.
All the Nigerian athletes are being closely monitored to avoid cases of doping and ensure Nigeria wins to avoid a repeat of the situation at the London Games, where Nigeria won no medal.
Amanzi Marcus, NTA News.
Amanzi Marcus reporting there on our sports package. Just before we go, a quick look at Thursday's weather prospect in some Nigerian and world cities. And that concludes the news on NTA International. I am Ifeanyi Okafor. Thanks for being great company.